I heard you talk about having children young in show business, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think I heard you call it a form of child abuse. Was that something you might have said?
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Did you have a normal childhood? Your teen life, was it normal, or did you miss out?
Oh, well, I think I was a workaholic as a kid.
Is that what it was?
And workaholism to me implies busyness, you know, and so I was always busy. There was always something structured and something I was accountable for. So I think when we're traumatized, we go one of two ways. We go over-responsible or we go under-responsible, you know, and I chose the former, and I'm still making up for it now.
Still?
Oh, yeah.
If you can, take me back to the moment and tell me if this happened, because I believe I read that you said that when you were a teenager, a record executive told you you had to lose weight.
Yeah,
Did that happen?
among other pieces of feedback.
What else was there?
Oh my gosh, there were people asking me to write different kinds of songs, different subject matters, you need to rhyme, you need to do this, people don't want this from you. I mean, there's so many pieces of unsolicited feedback that I got, to the point where it just felt violent after a while.
Has there been lasting effects of someone saying that to you when you're a teenager?
Well, it's also context. So this particular gentleman was in the context of an eating disorder culture where we're supposed to be 98 pounds for the rest of our lives, and that's the standard of beauty. You know, if this was the 1800s, I would have been encouraged to eat more. So it's all context,
right.
You know. So health was not really an issue, you know. And in the Western world right now, the three top values are rich, famous, 21, and skinny. They're kind of commensurate too. So for me, it's about presenting other value systems that might be a value for connection with spirit, connection with each other, connection with self. That's my job.
So that being said, having, you know, experienced the things you did when you were young, and having the views that you do that kids should not be thrust into the public eye or show business.
Oh, well, I think them being in the public eye, you know, if they're loved well and they're,
Right.
you know, they're, you know, informed about what this is all about, and the agenda behind the fuel that has them want to do it is talked about and neutralized almost. That's fine. It's when kids show up, they're doing something that is born from their natural, essential self, and then they have to work an extra 7 hours.
Right.
That's the abuse part.
Right.
You know, and then not being equipped. I think when a parent kind of imposes their perhaps vicarious desire for fame onto a child, it's confusing. You know, a lot of times parents will send their kids over to get autographs, and I can tell that child does not care. And maybe they like my hair, or maybe they just want to smile with me, but
Right.
their parents are forcing them to do stuff, and I always cringe when that happens.
So was there anything in particular, I mean, maybe the things that we've spoken about, that you have taken into motherhood and know that this shaped the decisions that you're making, that you're going to make with Ever?
Yeah, I think any parent any parent would likely say the same thing, which is, you know, just providing the opportunity for this little beautiful creature to express themselves. You know, we don't know what side of the brain they're going to prefer, if not both, or what their tendency will be. So just providing as much as possible for them, and that's why arts programs going the way of all things in schools is devastating for me, because you never know what this little creature wants to do, and if we take away the possibility, then we're potentially thwarting a big piece of who they'll be for the rest of their lives.
In 1991, she channeled her musical instincts into her debut album, Alanis, a fusion of pop, dance, big hair, and crop tops that fell right in line with the sound dominating mainstream airwaves at the time.
One day we just came up with the decision of, you know, doing dance music, and that's where we are now. It doesn't say that's where we're going to stay. A lot of people also say that when you get into this business, you're being thrown out to the wolves, so be careful, little girl. You know, but as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I know, the people that I've been working with have been wonderful.
Yep, it was all roses for a short while. The album went platinum, and the lead-off single, Too Hot, broke the top 20 on the Canadian singles chart.
I don't laugh at it. I just see it as something, you know, where I was at the time. I wasn't as fearless as I am now, and perhaps not as secure and as open and as unadulterated as I am now. So I just see it as a stage that I was in, and I wish I could sort of hug that person that I was, you know, and just say it's going to be okay.
So take me back to that time, if you can. You're doing, you really, well, let's go to when you released the dance pop stuff and it does really well in Canada. This was a part of your journey, a part of your path, the things after couldn't have come without that.
Yeah, no, I'm into it.
So what do you think about it now when you look back? What do you think about that Alanis in that time?
Musically, I just think I see it as sort of a a triangle of tastes. So as a kid, I listened to Etta James and Aretha Franklin, very soulful music. I listened to hip hop, even though I don't know some of your jokes. Listened to a lot of hip hop and Heavy D, and then I listened to what my parents were listening to, which was Leonard Cohen and Joni Mitchell and Neil Young, storytelling, Bob Dylan. So for me, the perfect blend, the ideal blend, is a combination of that rock with technological hip hop loops, combined with this storytelling autobiographical narrative. So when I was younger, I wasn't quite yet talking about the autobiographical aspect of things. Certainly I wasn't encouraged to. I was still encouraged to continue to rhyme, and if I stepped out of that structure, I was reprimanded. So yeah, that was just me starting to scratch the itches that then became what I do all the time now.
Did you tour with Vanilla Ice? And this is the last hip hop thing, I promise.
I opened up for Vanilla Ice. I think I was 16, maybe.
Ice Ice Baby.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was great. I was instructed not to look him in the eye.
Come on. Really?
Yeah.
Did you do it?
I didn't see him. Didn't have the opportunity to specifically not look him in the eye.
Don't look Vanilla Ice.
No, I get it, though. It can be overwhelming when everyone's staring at you.
I keep smiling when you're thinking of killing yourself.
From the age of 12 years old, Alanis Morissette was in the public eye. But it was her landmark album, Jagged Little Pill, that made her an overnight success and left her longing for a simpler life.
I was such a people watcher. And then all of a sudden, everybody's eyes were watching me, and I did not like that. I appreciated being able to get off stage, and there was no getting off stage for a long time. There was a period of time where I just didn't want to be here anymore. It wasn't fun being here at all.
The path to recovery was painful for Alanis and was riddled with unexpected aftershocks and relapses.
Recovering from love addiction is a fierce, fierce withdrawal.
Love addiction.
Ooh, it's not fun.
Thank you, India.
And how one trip to India and some very permanent reminders have helped Alanis heal.
Is the tattoo working?
No. I need to look at it more. I need to have it tattooed on the inside of my eyelids, apparently.
When Alanis Morissette in 60 continues.
Much has teamed up with The Source to give one lucky viewer and 4 friends the chance to watch the big jingle from their very own private Monster Incredible Lounge, decked out with this season's finest swag. All you have to do is enter online. It's that simple. Go to muchmusic.com/IWantThat.
With Swiffer dusters, a great clean doesn't have to take long.
I'm done. I rock.
Unlike sprays and dust rags, Swiffer Dusters Extender can reach hard-to-clean spaces in less time. Swiffer, great clean in less time or your money back.
After her short stint as Canada's dance pop queen, Alanis moved to LA in 1994, where she met producer and songwriter Glenn Ballard, who would ultimately change her life.
I had written with over 100 people over the last 3 years, and I became really disheartened with the whole collaborative process. And then MCA Publishing, which is the company I'm on, and the one that he's on, set us up and just, threw us out there. And we got together. I knew immediately that there was a real synergy and magic between us, and sure enough, we tapped into it.
Ballard and Morissette clicked, and over a few short weeks turned their inspired writing sessions into demos that would eventually become Alanis Morissette's 1995 landmark album, Jagged Little Pill.
And every time you speak her name, does she know how you told me you'd hold me until you died?
These songs were all written within 15 to 45 minutes, music and lyrics all at once, and recorded sometimes an hour later. And I'd listen to some of the songs the next day and not even remember having done them or written them. To this day, I shake my head in disbelief when I talk to Glenn about it too. It's like, we don't know what happened, and we aren't going to begin to analyze it because you really can't.
Jagged Little Pill went on to sell more than 30 million copies worldwide, earned Miss Morissette 5 Grammys, sent her on an 18-month-long world tour, and catapulted Alanis to a level of fame that has had lasting effects.
How much of an understatement is it to say that the success of Jagged Little Pill was overwhelming?
It was. I still have PTSD from that era. So, yeah, it was intense. It was still during an era where the playing field wasn't leveled the way that social networking is doing now, where audience and artist are more connected. There's more intimacy. Whereas back then there was this air of mystique and this air of titillation and chasing, and It was overwhelming. You know, people were sneaking into my hotel rooms and leaving notes in my bed sheets and in my suitcase, and my hair was being pulled out, and I was being, you know, I was being yelled at, called the C word a lot. You know, it was a pretty intense time.
So let's go back to the life forces for a second. What's some of the joy that came from that instant fame?
There was this opportunity for me to hold a high amount of energy, so I had to become this sorceress of some kind, really, to be able to hold all that incoming energy, whether it's on stage or otherwise. And I'm an empath, and I'm slightly telepathic, and so for me to feel everything everyone was feeling when they were listening to these songs, it was a very accelerated education in how to take care of myself, being the kind of human being that I am. So that was lovely. And now I can help other people who are incredibly sensitive in that way.
And what about some of the pain that came from it?
The sadness for me was that I thought fame would afford great connection, you know, but it actually wound up disconnecting me from people. And I was such a people watcher. I was actually, and still am in a lot of ways, really introverted. So I would watch people. And then all of a sudden everybody's eyes were watching me, and I did not like that. I liked it to the degree that I'm a ham and I love performing on stage, but I appreciated being able to get off stage. And there was no getting off stage for a long time.
What about all the other stuff that came with it? Like, all of a sudden you're in the media like crazy, and people are calling you the angry woman cover. And then because you kind of shy away from people, and you're not really speaking to a lot of people, then there's this ridiculous notion that Glenn Ballard manufactured you, and all these ridiculous things happen.
Really sexist, yeah.
So, what did you learn from that, maybe about the business or about handling, I mean, I hate to say your brand, but you know, what did you learn about that aspect of the business? What did you take from those things?
Well, I did see that it was incredibly patriarchal and reductive and one-dimensionalizing, which is a violent act. You know, us human beings are very complex creatures, and for us to be rendered one-dimensional is really just a lazy audience. You know, it's like where there's so many aspects and layers to being a human being. So I appreciate that people want to categorize and then throw it away, and that they're maybe tired. But I also just saw that the perception of me being Svengali as such, you know, understandable, but I think over time it was proven to be inaccurate.
I want you to know.
You Oughta Know has become, you know, this phenomenon. And I mean, you even did an episode about Curb Your Enthusiasm about it. Like, it's become it's become bigger than just a song, and it's become this cliche go-to thing. Like, don't date a songwriter, or they'll write a You Oughta Know. Now Adele has taken some of that slack off your back these days, but thanks Adele.
Yeah.
But what's your relationship with that song then?
And I'm here to remind you.
I love that song. You know, it's, for me, anger is such a gorgeous emotion. So if ever there's some pent-up anger during the day, and I know I have a show that night, I know I'll be borrowing that song to channel it through it. The only thing that I did realize about You Oughta Know, having sung it so many times on stage, I had this naive thought that I would be able to heal my relationships through expressing them and catharting them on stage and dramatizing these emotions. But I found that not to be the case. I found that my taking the courage it took to even write the song and really growing up and applying it to my relationships and speaking directly about my anger rather than just repressing it like a good Canadian and then writing about it and hoping that will be, you know, that would take care of everything, that has not been the case. So I've really learned from my songs to actually be that way in my day-to-day life too.
Cool.
You are